In the golden sands of Egypt, under the shadow of the mighty Nile, one name rises above all others: Cleopatra VII. Her name has been whispered through centuries, a symbol of beauty, power, and intrigue. But Cleopatra was more than the seductress painted by her enemies and immortalized by legend. She was the last pharaoh of Egypt, a queen who dared to stand against the growing might of Rome and reshape the ancient world through her intelligence, ambition, and unyielding determination. Picture this: a young woman, barely in her 20s, thrust into a world of political chaos. Her kingdom was on the brink of collapse, her family plagued by treachery and murder. Cleopatra wasn't handed power, she seized it. In an era dominated by men and empires, she carved her place in history, not through sheer force, but with wit, strategy, and an unmatched ability to navigate the treacherous waters of diplomacy. But her story is not merely one of political maneuvering. Cleopatra was a ruler who understood the weight of her crown. She spoke multiple languages, studied science, philosophy, and the arts, and immersed herself in the culture of her people. Unlike many rulers of her time, Cleopatra wasn't a distant figurehead. She was deeply involved in the governance of her kingdom, working tirelessly to secure Egypt's prosperity and sovereignty in an age of relentless Roman expansion. And yet, Cleopatra's life was a constant battle, a battle for her throne, her people, and her legacy. When Julius Caesar, one of Rome's greatest generals, entered the fray, she saw an opportunity to solidify her power. Their alliance was more than a romantic entanglement, it was a calculated move to protect her kingdom from the Roman juggernaut. Later, her partnership with Mark Antony would further intertwine Egypt's fate with the ambitions of Rome. But these alliances came at a cost. Cleopatra's name became a weapon used against her by her enemies. Roman propaganda painted her as a manipulative seductress, a foreign queen who sought to corrupt Rome itself. Yet, beneath these accusations lay a woman fighting for survival, a queen trying to secure a future for her kingdom in a world dominated by foreign powers. As her life reached its climactic moments, Cleopatra faced impossible choices. Would she surrender to Rome and watch her kingdom fall into obscurity, or would she take control of her fate in one final defiant act? Her death marked the end of an era. With Cleopatra's passing, Egypt fell into Roman hands, and the Ptolemaic dynasty came to an end. Yet, her story refused to fade. Cleopatra became a symbol of resilience and ambition, a figure whose life continues to captivate historians, writers, and dreamers alike. In this documentary, we will unravel the life of Cleopatra VII, exploring her rise to power, her alliances, her triumphs, and her ultimate tragedy. This is not the story of a mythical seductress or a tragic heroine crafted by Roman historians. This is the story of a queen who stood at the crossroads of history and chose to fight until the end. Through her story, we will ask, was Cleopatra a victim of her time, or was she the architect of her own destiny? What can her life teach us about power, ambition, and the price of defiance? Prepare to enter a world where every decision carried the weight of an empire and every alliance could shape the course of history. This is the untold story of Cleopatra VII, the queen who defied Rome and etched her name into the sands of time. Cleopatra's life began within a dynasty that was as powerful as it was turbulent, shaping her into one of history's most iconic rulers. Her lineage, upbringing, and early experiences in the political maelstrom of Ptolemaic Egypt laid the groundwork for her remarkable journey. Cleopatra VII belonged to the Ptolemaic dynasty, a line of rulers established by Ptolemy I Soter, one of Alexander the Great's trusted generals. When Alexander's vast empire fragmented after his death, Ptolemy claimed Egypt as his territory, founding a Greek ruling dynasty that would last nearly 3 centuries. Although they ruled over an Egyptian populace, the Ptolemies largely clung to their Macedonian heritage, speaking Greek and following Hellenistic customs. This created a cultural divide between the ruling class and the native Egyptians, which Cleopatra would later navigate with strategic brilliance. The dynasty's stability often depended on alliances forged through intermarriages within the family, which inevitably led to infighting and political intrigue, a recurring theme in Cleopatra's life. Born in 69 BCE in the bustling city of Alexandria, Cleopatra entered a world of immense wealth and danger. Her father, Ptolemy XII, known by the nickname Auletes, the flute player, was a controversial figure. His rule was marked by financial instability, heavy reliance on Roman support, and a contentious relationship with his subjects. Cleopatra's mother remains a mystery. She may have been Cleopatra VI, a consort of Ptolemy XII, but records are inconclusive. Cleopatra was one of several siblings, including brothers Ptolemy XIII and Ptolemy XIV, and sisters Arsinoe IV and Berenice IV. These siblings were not just family members but also potential rivals, as the Ptolemaic throne often changed hands through betrayal and violence. The shadow of these familial rivalries loomed large over Cleopatra's early years. During Cleopatra's childhood, Egypt was a land of contrasts. On one hand, it was incredibly wealthy, with fertile lands nourished by the Nile and a prime position for trade in the Mediterranean. On the other hand, it was politically fragile, heavily influenced by the expanding power of Rome. Ptolemy Xi's reign epitomized this precarious balance. To maintain his position, he borrowed heavily from Roman financiers, plunging Egypt into debt. Discontent among his subjects forced him into exile in 58 BCE, during which Cleopatra's sister, Berenice IV, seized the throne. This period of instability exposed young Cleopatra to the brutal realities of power and survival. Cleopatra's education was exceptional, even by royal standards. Alexandria, home to the Great Library and a center of ancient learning, provided an ideal environment for intellectual growth. She studied subjects ranging from philosophy and medicine to astronomy and mathematics. Perhaps most significantly, she became fluent in multiple languages, including Egyptian, Greek, Hebrew, and Aramaic. This linguistic skill set her apart from her predecessors, as most Ptolemaic rulers did not bother to learn the language of their subjects. Her ability to communicate directly with the Egyptian people played a crucial role in consolidating her rule. Beyond her intellect, Cleopatra's personality was marked by a sharp political acumen and a natural charisma that would later captivate powerful men and sway the tides of history. Cleopatra's first brush with political upheaval came early. In 58 BCE, her father fled Egypt amid growing opposition, and her sister, Berenice IV, assumed the throne. This power shift exposed Cleopatra to court politics and the consequences of rebellion. When Ptolemy XII returned to power 3 years later, supported by Roman military intervention, he executed Berenice IV, sending a clear message about the cost of defiance. Cleopatra, undoubtedly observing these events, absorbed valuable lessons about the interplay of power, loyalty, and ruthlessness. As a woman in Ptolemaic Egypt, Cleopatra benefited from societal norms that allowed for greater female influence compared to many other ancient cultures. Women in Egypt could own property, inherit wealth, and even rule as pharaohs, as evidenced by figures like Hatshepsut and Nefertiti. Cleopatra would later draw inspiration from these predecessors, blending their legacy with Hellenistic traditions to craft her unique identity as a ruler. Unlike the Roman world, where women's roles were largely confined to the private sphere, Egypt offered a fertile ground for Cleopatra to assert herself. In the latter years of her father's reign, Cleopatra began to take on an active role in governance. As co-regent, she gained first-hand experience in managing the kingdom's affairs, including maintaining a delicate balance between appeasing Rome and addressing internal challenges. She demonstrated a keen understanding of political dynamics, skills that would serve her well in the tumultuous years ahead. When Ptolemy XII died in 51 BCE, Cleopatra and her younger brother, Ptolemy XIII, were named co-rulers. However, their partnership was fraught with tension from the start. Cleopatra, then around 18 years old, sought to assert her authority, sidelining her brother, who was only about 10. This power struggle escalated into a full-blown conflict, setting the stage for Cleopatra's dramatic rise. Even in these early years, she displayed a willingness to take bold, calculated risks to secure her position, foreshadowing the tenacity that would define her reign. In Cleopatra's early life, the seeds of her greatness were sown. Her lineage, education, and early exposure to the volatile politics of Ptolemaic Egypt shaped her into a formidable leader. These experiences, coupled with her sharp intellect and indomitable spirit, prepared her to navigate the challenges that lay ahead and to leave an indelible mark on history. Upon the death of their father Ptolemy XII, in 51 BCE, Cleopatra and her younger brother, Ptolemy XIII, were made joint rulers of Egypt. However, the sibling relationship quickly soured, as Cleopatra sought to consolidate her power and rule independently. She was determined not to share authority with her younger brother, especially as she was older and had a more progressive vision for Egypt's future. Cleopatra's ambition and assertiveness clashed with the advisors surrounding Ptolemy XIII, who were concerned about her political acumen and attempts to strengthen her own position. Ptolemy XII's court factions, including those aligned with Roman interests, conspired against Cleopatra, fearing that her policies might shift Egypt away from Roman influence. These tensions came to a head when Cleopatra was forced to flee Alexandria in 48 BCE, after her brother's advisors turned the people against her. Despite this setback, Cleopatra's exile was not the end of her story. Instead, it marked the beginning of a series of strategic moves. While in exile, Cleopatra gathered a loyal network of supporters, including influential military commanders and local factions. She displayed remarkable resilience, as she carefully planned her return to power. Cleopatra's ability to turn the tables on her brother, even when exiled and unsupported, showcased her exceptional political intelligence and tactical savvy. Cleopatra's fate would soon be linked with that of the Roman general Julius Caesar, whose intervention would change the course of history. Cleopatra, desperate to regain her throne, devised an audacious plan to meet Caesar in person. She had herself smuggled into his presence, reportedly hidden inside a carpet or a bedroll, a move that would become one of the most famous moments in history. This dramatic entrance was not only an example of Cleopatra's daring, but also an early indication of her ability to think strategically and take bold actions to advance her cause. Once in Caesar's presence, Cleopatra captivated him not just with her beauty, but with her intelligence and political astuteness. At a time when Roman politics were intensely focused on expanding the empire, Cleopatra presented herself as a legitimate ruler of Egypt, an invaluable ally for Caesar. The two shared a keen understanding of each other's political motives. Cleopatra recognized that Rome's support was crucial for her to reclaim her throne, while Caesar saw Egypt's strategic importance and vast wealth as a means of solidifying his power in the region. Their political alliance soon became intertwined with personal affection, further deepening their bond. The turning point in Cleopatra's struggle for power came when Julius Caesar decided to intervene in the ongoing civil war in Egypt. Caesar, who had supported Cleopatra's return to Alexandria, now found himself embroiled in a military conflict between Cleopatra's forces and those loyal to Ptolemy XIII. This conflict, known as the Alexandrian War, was not just a battle for the Egyptian throne, but a struggle for influence between Rome and Egypt. Cleopatra played an active role in the war, providing strategic advice and actively participating in the planning of military operations. Her leadership and resourcefulness during this conflict proved her to be more than just a figurehead queen. She was a ruler in her own right. Caesar's army, along with Cleopatra's forces, eventually defeated Ptolemy XII's army, leading to the young king's death in the Nile River. His death marked the end of Cleopatra's immediate rival and cleared the path for her to be reinstated as Egypt's queen. With Caesar's backing, Cleopatra was reinstated as the ruler of Egypt alongside her younger brother, Ptolemy XIV, who had been placed on the throne as a puppet ruler. Cleopatra's return was symbolic not only of her personal victory but of the larger power shift that had occurred in Egypt, as it now operated under Caesar's influence. Cleopatra's bond with Julius Caesar was far from purely political. While their alliance was undoubtedly grounded in mutual benefit, their personal relationship grew over time, culminating in the birth of Caesarion in 47 BCE. Caesarion was believed to be Julius Caesar's son, though the Roman general's marriage to Calpurnia precluded any official recognition of the boy as his heir. Nevertheless, Cleopatra publicly presented Caesarion as Caesar's son, a move that further cemented her political position and connected her reign to that of the most powerful man in Rome. In 46 BCE, Cleopatra traveled to Rome with Caesarion, marking her first visit to the city. Cleopatra's presence in Rome was a statement of political power. She was not merely Caesar's mistress, but a reigning queen in her own right. Her time in Rome was significant not just for her personal relationship with Caesar, but for the way it highlighted her ambition to integrate Egypt more closely into the Roman world. Her presence there did not go unnoticed, and she stirred both admiration and criticism among the Roman elite. To many, Cleopatra was a powerful and exotic queen whose influence threatened Rome's patriarchal structure. With Caesar's endorsement, Cleopatra was able to institute reforms in Egypt that were aimed at stabilizing her reign and consolidating power. One of her primary focuses was the Egyptian economy, which had been weakened by years of mismanagement and political instability. Cleopatra worked to revive Egypt's agricultural sector and ensure the continued prosperity of its most important industries, such as grain production. At the same time, Cleopatra made significant efforts to connect with her Egyptian subjects. She adopted more traditional pharaonic titles and appeared in public as the embodiment of the goddess Isis, a move that was both a religious and political statement. Cleopatra's decision to present herself as Isis, the most revered goddess of Egyptian mythology, was a strategic effort to strengthen her relationship with the people of Egypt, who saw her as their rightful ruler. This move also bolstered her position as a ruler who understood the need to maintain Egypt's traditional cultural and religious values while also navigating the political realities of Roman influence. Cleopatra's reign during this period also saw the strengthening of Egypt's trade networks, which were critical to the kingdom's independence and prosperity. By expanding trade routes and securing key alliances, Cleopatra aimed to reduce Egypt's dependence on Rome, while still leveraging Rome's support to protect her throne. The assassination of Julius Caesar in 44 BCE was a devastating blow to Cleopatra, both personally and politically. Caesar's death threw Rome into chaos, with the political vacuum leaving Cleopatra uncertain about her future in the Roman sphere. Despite this uncertainty, Cleopatra quickly returned to Egypt to protect her throne and her son, Caesarion, from potential rivals who might try to undermine her rule. The murder of Caesar had a ripple effect throughout the Roman world, and Cleopatra was keenly aware that she needed to adapt to the shifting power dynamics in Rome. The instability in Rome prompted Cleopatra to carefully consider her next political move and reassess her alliances. She realized that the new leaders of Rome might not view her with the same favor as Caesar had, and she needed to be strategic in her dealings with the emerging powers in Rome. In the wake of Julius Caesar's assassination, Cleopatra took decisive action to consolidate her power in Egypt. She quickly eliminated potential threats to her rule, including the suspicious death of her co-regent, Ptolemy XIV. It is widely believed that Cleopatra orchestrated his death in order to secure sole rule for herself and her son, Caesarion. With her son now firmly positioned as her co-regent, Cleopatra made it clear that she intended to maintain her control over Egypt and link her rule to the legacy of Julius Caesar. By declaring Caesarion as Caesar's heir, Cleopatra tied her reign to the most powerful figure in Rome's history. This not only solidified her position as queen, but also provided her with a strong political bargaining chip, which would prove crucial in the coming years. Cleopatra understood that Rome's politics were ever-changing, and she knew that the future of Egypt depended on her ability to form strategic alliances with key Roman leaders. As she navigated the complex political landscape, she began early interactions with powerful figures such as Mark Antony. These initial connections would lay the foundation for the future alliance that would define Cleopatra's later years. Cleopatra's ability to adapt to changing circumstances and her willingness to work with Roman leaders, while maintaining Egypt's sovereignty, marked her as a shrewd and calculating ruler. Her diplomacy, combined with her knowledge of Roman politics, allowed her to ensure that Egypt remained a significant player in the Mediterranean world, even as Roman influence continued to grow. The rise of Julius Caesar's power and its impact on Cleopatra. In 49 BCE, Julius Caesar crossed the Rubicon, initiating a civil war that significantly altered the Roman Empire's political structure. This period marked the emergence of Caesar as the uncontested leader of Rome. Cleopatra, facing political instability in Egypt, saw Caesar as her most viable ally. With the death of her father, Ptolemy XII, and her subsequent co-rule with her younger brother, Ptolemy XIII, Cleopatra quickly became embroiled in a struggle for power. Her brother's advisors, fearing Cleopatra's ambitions, forced her into exile, but she soon sought Caesar's help to reclaim her throne. The political climate in Rome was shifting dramatically, and Cleopatra understood that aligning herself with Caesar would give her the support she needed to return to power. Caesar's victory in Rome and his subsequent rise to power strengthened Cleopatra's position, as their alliance would provide mutual benefits. Caesar's success on the battlefield paralleled Cleopatra's determination to reclaim her position in Egypt, marking the beginning of a critical relationship that would shape the future of both Egypt and Rome. The Alexandrian War, Cleopatra's return to the throne. In 48 BCE, Cleopatra, who had been exiled by her brother Ptolemy XIII's court factions, took bold steps to regain control of Egypt. With Julius Caesar's support, Cleopatra returned to Alexandria, where the conflict between her faction and Ptolemy XIII's forces escalated into the Alexandrian War. Caesar, recognizing the importance of Cleopatra's reign for Egypt's stability, mobilized his forces in support of her claim. The war marked a crucial turning point in Cleopatra's path to regaining her throne. Despite Ptolemy XIII's resistance, Cleopatra's alliance with Caesar proved decisive. The battle ended with Ptolemy XIII's death, and Cleopatra was restored as the Queen of Egypt. However, her restoration was not without challenges, as it forced Cleopatra into a deeper dependence on Caesar's military and political power, intertwining the fate of Egypt and Rome. This victory laid the foundation for Cleopatra's rule in Egypt and solidified her position as a formidable political figure. Cleopatra's relationship with Julius Caesar. Cleopatra's relationship with Julius Caesar was both a political alliance and a personal bond that would shape the future of Egypt. After her victory in the Alexandrian War, Cleopatra's relationship with Caesar deepened. They spent significant time together in Rome, where Cleopatra gave birth to a son, Caesarion, in 47 BCE. Caesar, though never publicly acknowledging Caesarion as his heir, likely viewed the child as a potential successor. Cleopatra's time in Rome was an opportunity for her to strengthen Egypt's position within the Roman political framework. Her presence in Rome demonstrated her ability to navigate the complex dynamics of Roman politics and culture, ensuring that Egypt's interests were represented. During this period, Cleopatra continued to maintain her image as the divine ruler of Egypt, aligning herself with the goddess Isis and reinforcing her legitimacy as queen. Their relationship, while politically beneficial, was also deeply personal. Cleopatra and Caesar's bond created a lasting impact on Roman society, despite the fact that it was controversial among certain Roman factions. Cleopatra's presence in Rome and her association with Caesar solidified her position as one of the most influential women in the ancient world. Cleopatra's return to Egypt and political reforms. After Caesar's assassination in 44 BCE, Cleopatra was forced to return quickly to Egypt to safeguard her throne and her son Caesarion's future. The political instability that followed Caesar's death created a power vacuum in Rome, forcing Cleopatra to reassess her position. She continued her efforts to stabilize Egypt, using both political and economic reforms to consolidate her rule. One of Cleopatra's key reforms was her focus on Egypt's economy. She sought to improve agricultural output and stabilize Egypt's tax system. These reforms were designed to reduce Egypt's dependence on Rome and strengthen the kingdom's financial independence. Cleopatra also maintained her strong connection with the Egyptian people, embracing her role as a pharaoh and presenting herself as the goddess Isis. Through these reforms, Cleopatra sought to ensure Egypt's continued independence in the face of Rome's growing dominance. She also worked to maintain Egypt's cultural identity, ensuring that it remained a powerful force in the Mediterranean world. The aftermath of Caesar's assassination and Cleopatra's struggle for survival. Following Julius Caesar's assassination in 44 BCE, Cleopatra faced immediate uncertainty. The political turmoil in Rome led to a realignment of power, with Caesar's allies vying for control. Cleopatra, recognizing the dangers of the shifting Roman politics, quickly returned to Egypt to secure her position. She focused on safeguarding her son Caesarion's claim to the throne and preparing for potential threats. The immediate aftermath of Caesar's assassination saw a period of instability, both in Rome and in Egypt. Cleopatra understood that she could no longer rely solely on Rome's political stability for her power. Instead, she worked to strengthen her position in Egypt, ensuring that the kingdom would remain autonomous while carefully managing her relationship with Rome. Cleopatra's political acumen during this time allowed her to navigate these challenges and remain in power, despite the ever-changing dynamics of Roman politics. Cleopatra's relationship with Mark Antony. Cleopatra's decision to align with Mark Antony was a crucial turning point in her rule. Following Caesar's death, Cleopatra sought out Antony, a leading member of Rome's second triumvirate, for support. Their meeting in 41 BCE marked the beginning of a political and personal alliance that would change the course of both Roman and Egyptian history. Cleopatra's relationship with Antony was both romantic and strategic. Antony, seeking to consolidate his own power in Rome, recognized the importance of Cleopatra's resources and influence. Cleopatra, on the other hand, saw in Antony a potential ally who could help her safeguard Egypt's independence. Together, they formed a powerful partnership, marked by both political maneuvering and a shared vision of expanding their combined influence. Their relationship, however, was not without controversy. The Roman Senate, led by Octavian, viewed Antony's association with Cleopatra as a betrayal of Roman interests. As Antony's ties to Cleopatra grew stronger, tensions with Octavian escalated, leading to a political crisis that would culminate in the Battle of Actium. The Battle of Actium, the final conflict. The Battle of Actium, fought in 31 BCE, was the decisive confrontation between the forces of Octavian and those of Cleopatra and Mark Antony. This naval battle, off the coast of Greece, marked the culmination of the political struggle for control of the Roman Empire. Cleopatra and Antony's fleet was decisively defeated by Octavian's forces, and the battle signified the end of their hopes of consolidating power. After the defeat, Cleopatra and Antony retreated to Egypt, where they attempted to regroup. Despite their efforts, Octavian's forces eventually invaded Egypt, and the couple's resistance crumbled. With the fall of Alexandria in 30 BCE, Cleopatra and Antony chose to end their lives. Cleopatra's death marked the end of the Ptolemaic dynasty and the beginning of Egypt's transition into a province of the Roman Empire. Cleopatra's death in 30 BCE marked the end of an era for Egypt. As the last pharaoh of Egypt, Her death symbolized the final absorption of Egypt into the Roman Empire. Despite her political downfall, Cleopatra's legacy endured. She is remembered as one of history's most intelligent and politically savvy rulers. Her alliances with Julius Caesar and Mark Antony reshaped the Mediterranean world, and her ability to wield power as a female monarch in a male-dominated world has inspired generations. Cleopatra's reign and her political strategies also left a lasting mark on Egypt. Her efforts to maintain Egypt's independence and cultural identity, despite the overwhelming power of Rome, showcased her determination and vision. Even after her death, Cleopatra's legacy continued to influence both Egyptian and Roman culture, making her one of the most iconic figures in ancient history. The political and military struggles leading to the Battle of Actium. The rise to power of Cleopatra and Mark Antony was not without its challenges, and the final years of their alliance were marked by intense political and military struggles. Following the assassination of Julius Caesar in 44 BCE, Rome descended into a state of chaos. The political vacuum left in the wake of Caesar's death created fertile ground for ambitious leaders to vie for control of the Roman Republic. Cleopatra, seeking to secure Egypt's independence and her own reign, formed an alliance with one of these leaders, Mark Antony. Antony, who was already one of the three members of the Second Triumvirate alongside Octavian, Caesar's adopted son, and Lepidus, was in a position of power. Cleopatra, on the other hand, had a clear interest in securing her own reign in Egypt and ensuring her political survival. The alliance between the two was not just political, it was also marked by personal bonds, most notably their romantic relationship. However, their close ties, particularly Cleopatra's growing influence over Antony, became a point of contention in Rome. Octavian, sensing a threat to his own ambitions, began to turn public opinion against Antony, focusing on the relationship between Antony and Cleopatra as evidence of Antony's betrayal of Rome. The growing political rift between Octavian and Antony escalated into a full-blown conflict. Octavian's strategy was to manipulate Roman public sentiment against Antony by framing him as a traitor to the Roman state, someone who had allied with a foreign queen and was now serving her interests rather than those of Rome. This propaganda campaign set the stage for the climactic battle between the two forces, as it became clear that a confrontation would be inevitable. Cleopatra's role in Antony's campaigns and the growing tensions with Rome. Cleopatra's involvement in Antony's campaigns extended beyond her political partnership with him. As Antony focused on the eastern provinces of the Roman Empire, Cleopatra played an instrumental role in ensuring that Egypt remained stable and economically prosperous. Her support helped bolster Antony's military efforts in the east, but it also made her a more significant player in the larger political landscape. Cleopatra's resources and her influence over Antony allowed him to concentrate on expanding his territory and solidifying his power base in the eastern Mediterranean. However, as Cleopatra's influence over Antony grew, so did the tensions with Rome. Antony's decision to grant Cleopatra lands and territories within the Roman Empire and to acknowledge her children as heirs to his throne alienated many in Rome, particularly the Senate, which was already suspicious of Antony's actions. These decisions further fueled Octavian's campaign of propaganda, which depicted Antony as a man who had given up his loyalty to Rome in favor of a foreign queen. The tension reached a breaking point when Antony and Cleopatra began to establish their own kingdom in the east, with Cleopatra's influence over Antony shaping his policies. Their growing power was seen as a direct threat to Rome's republican values, and many in Rome feared that the duo would attempt to form a new empire under their rule, with Antony as the Roman emperor and Cleopatra as the queen of the eastern territories. Antony's shift away from Roman interests, his growing dependence on Cleopatra, and their increasingly public relationship were used by Octavian to paint them as a threat to Roman political integrity. The more Antony and Cleopatra aligned themselves, the more Rome's Senate and people began to view them as enemies of the Roman state, fueling a growing desire for a military confrontation. Cleopatra's children and the symbolic stakes of the conflict. The children born of Cleopatra and Antony's union, particularly the twins Alexander Helios and Cleopatra Selene, became symbolic figures in the political struggle between the two factions. These children were seen as potential heirs to a new dynasty, one that would rise from the ashes of the Roman Republic. Cleopatra's decision to have children with Antony was not only a personal choice but also a political strategy to solidify her position and ensure the continuation of the Ptolemaic dynasty. The birth of Cleopatra's children further complicated the political landscape. Octavian seized upon the birth of these children to further his propaganda campaign, suggesting that Antony intended to make Cleopatra's children the rulers of Rome and its territories. This idea of a foreign queen and her children ruling over Roman lands played into the narrative that Antony was betraying the Roman people. Octavian's accusations, which portrayed Antony as a man who had abandoned Rome in favor of Cleopatra, became a rallying cry for those who opposed Antony's rule. For Cleopatra, her children were not merely heirs, they were symbols of her enduring legacy and Egypt's future. By positioning her son Caesarion as her co-regent and her other children as future rulers, Cleopatra hoped to create a powerful, lasting dynasty that would keep Egypt independent from Rome. The birth of her children, therefore, was a key part of her strategy to maintain her power and ensure Egypt's sovereignty. The build-up to the Battle of Actium. The political tension between Octavian and Antony reached its apex in 32 BCE, when Octavian declared war on Cleopatra. This move came after a series of diplomatic confrontations and mounting tensions over Antony's behavior. The declaration of war by Octavian was framed as a war against Cleopatra's influence over Antony, but in reality, it was a contest for control of the Roman world. Octavian's decision to target Cleopatra directly was a strategic move to discredit Antony further and remove him as a threat to his own power. By this time, Antony's military position had weakened. His forces, once formidable, were stretched thin, and his political alliances within Rome had deteriorated. Octavian, on the other hand, had consolidated his power and was gaining support from key figures in Rome, including the Senate and the Roman people. His propaganda campaign had successfully turned public opinion against Antony, and the stage was set for a final confrontation between the two forces. As both sides prepared for war, military strategies were devised. Antony and Cleopatra stationed their fleets in the eastern Mediterranean, with Cleopatra's support bolstering Antony's position. Octavian, however, had a key advantage. His fleet was commanded by the brilliant strategist Agrippa, who would prove to be the decisive factor in the upcoming battle. The build-up to the Battle of Actium was not just a military confrontation, but also a symbolic struggle. The battle would determine the future of the Roman Empire, the fate of Cleopatra's dynasty, and the future of Egypt. Should Antony and Cleopatra emerge victorious, they would maintain their hold over the eastern provinces and potentially reshape the power dynamics of the ancient world. However, should Octavian win, Rome would consolidate its power, and Cleopatra's reign would come to a tragic end. The Battle of Actium, Antony and Cleopatra's last stand. The Battle of Actium, fought on September 2, 31 BCE, was one of the most decisive naval battles in history. The confrontation took place off the coast of Greece, near the Ionian Sea. It was a direct clash between Octavian's fleet, led by Agrippa, and the combined forces of Antony and Cleopatra. Despite Antony's experience as a general and the support of Cleopatra's fleet, the battle was a disaster for the two of them. Agrippa's superior tactics and naval expertise led to a decisive Roman victory. Antony's fleet was decisively defeated, and Cleopatra's forces, which had been integral to their combined strategy, were left in disarray. Following the defeat, Antony and Cleopatra retreated to Egypt, their hopes of maintaining control of the eastern provinces shattered. The outcome of the battle signaled the end of Cleopatra's reign and the decline of Antony's power. Their forces were decimated, and they were left with little hope of recovering from the defeat. The failure at Actium marked the culmination of a series of events that had escalated from political rivalry to full-scale military conflict, and it was clear that Octavian's path to ultimate power was now unobstructed. The deaths of Antony and Cleopatra. In the wake of their defeat, Antony and Cleopatra sought refuge in Egypt, hoping to regroup and rally their forces. However, Octavian's army was relentless in their pursuit, and it soon became clear that resistance was futile. In the face of impending defeat, both Antony and Cleopatra made the tragic decision to end their lives. Antony, devastated by the loss of the battle and believing Cleopatra had already died, took his own life by falling on his sword. When Cleopatra heard of Antony's death, she was overcome with grief and despair. She chose to follow him in death, arranging for her own demise through the bite of an asp, a dramatic and symbolic end for Egypt's last queen. The deaths of Antony and Cleopatra marked the final chapter in the Ptolemaic dynasty and the end of Egypt's independence. Octavian's victory meant the absorption of Egypt into the Roman Empire, marking the end of an era. With Cleopatra's death, the last significant challenger to Octavian's power was removed, and Rome entered a new phase under the leadership of its first emperor, Augustus. Although Cleopatra's life ended tragically, her legacy has endured for centuries. She remains one of the most compelling figures in history, known for her political savvy, her remarkable beauty, and her ability to navigate the complex dynamics of both Roman and Egyptian politics. Her reign was marked by a series of ambitious efforts to maintain Egypt's independence and to secure her own power, and despite her ultimate failure, her story continues to captivate people around the world. Cleopatra's influence on Roman politics, her relationships with Julius Caesar and Mark Antony, and her tragic death have made her a symbol of both strength and vulnerability. Her legacy lives on not only in history but also in the literature, art, and culture that continues to be inspired by her life and reign. The aftermath of Cleopatra's death. The deaths of Cleopatra and Mark Antony in 30 BCE marked a dramatic shift in the course of history. Cleopatra, Egypt's last active pharaoh, had ruled for over 2 decades, but her demise ushered in a new era, not just for Egypt, but for the entire Mediterranean world. With her death, the Ptolemaic dynasty came to a tragic end. Egypt, which had maintained a semi-independent status under the Ptolemies, was now fully annexed by the Roman Empire. Cleopatra's death was the final blow to the Egyptian monarchy, and her tragic end as the last ruler of Egypt set the stage for its transformation into a Roman province. Following the fall of Antony and Cleopatra, Octavian, later Augustus, emerged as the undisputed leader of the Roman world. Egypt, which had been a crucial and wealthy province, was now under Roman control. Octavian took steps to consolidate his power, ensuring the complete integration of Egypt into the Roman Empire. Egypt was now the breadbasket of Rome, providing grain and other resources to feed the growing empire. Egypt under Roman rule. With the annexation of Egypt, the once independent and rich kingdom became just another province in the vast Roman Empire. Octavian, as Rome's first emperor, took special care in managing Egypt. Unlike other provinces, Egypt was governed directly by Rome rather than by elected officials or local leaders. To ensure the smooth running of Egypt, Octavian placed a Roman prefect in charge, and the wealthy and fertile Nile Delta became a key resource for Rome's imperial needs. Under Roman rule, Egypt was exploited for its wealth and agricultural produce. The once glorious and culturally rich Ptolemaic kingdom now operated under Roman imperial structures. The vast temples, tombs, and monuments left behind by Cleopatra's predecessors remained intact, but the political and cultural identity of Egypt slowly became absorbed into the greater Roman Empire. Though Egypt continued to hold some importance due to its strategic location and economic resources, its days as an independent power had come to an end. The Romanization of Egypt also led to changes in Egyptian religion and culture. While the Egyptians still worshipped their ancient gods, the influence of Rome grew. Over time, Roman gods and practices blended with Egyptian traditions, creating a hybrid culture. Egyptian priesthoods, once powerful and influential under the Ptolemies, gradually saw their authority diminish under Roman control. The legacy of Cleopatra, a symbol of power and tragedy. Cleopatra's legacy, though marked by her tragic end, was far from forgotten. While her life ended in failure, her story became a symbol of power, intelligence, and ambition, woven into the fabric of Roman history. In death, Cleopatra's image continued to inspire both admiration and intrigue. Despite her defeat, Cleopatra's reputation as a powerful and shrewd ruler did not fade. Her ability to influence 2 of Rome's most powerful men, Julius Caesar and Mark Antony, ensured that her name would live on in history. In the years following her death, Cleopatra became a symbol of female power, political cunning, and even tragedy. Her relationships with Caesar and Antony, both of whom were prominent Roman leaders, ensured that her name remained in the public consciousness. Her story was often romanticized in literature, art, and historical accounts, shaping the way later generations perceived her. Cleopatra's legacy was further amplified by the dramatic nature of her life and death. The image of a queen so desperate to protect her kingdom that she chose suicide over capture struck a chord with audiences throughout history. Her final moments, her intelligence, her beauty, and her political astuteness ensured her place in the annals of history. Octavian's consolidation of power, the rise of Augustus. With Cleopatra's death, Octavian secured his position as the uncontested ruler of Rome. The defeat of Antony and Cleopatra effectively removed his most significant rival. Octavian's rise to power was marked by his ability to outmaneuver his political and military adversaries, consolidating his authority through both political strategy and military force. In the aftermath of his victory, Octavian took steps to solidify his dominance, gradually transforming the Roman Republic into an empire. The Senate granted him the title Augustus in 27 BCE, marking the beginning of the Roman Empire. While Octavian maintained the outward appearance of Roman republican institutions, he held absolute power as emperor. Augustus's reign brought relative peace and stability to Rome, known as the Pax Romana, but this stability came at the cost of the republic's traditional system of governance. As Augustus settled into his role as emperor, he ensured that Egypt remained under Roman control. He recognized the strategic importance of Egypt, not only for its wealth but also as a symbol of Roman imperial power. Egypt's annexation represented the final stage in the consolidation of Roman dominance across the Mediterranean world. Decline of the Ptolemaic dynasty's cultural influence. The fall of Cleopatra and the Ptolemaic dynasty marked the decline of Hellenistic influence in Egypt. The Ptolemies had established a unique blend of Greek and Egyptian culture, but with their death, the fusion of these two cultures began to wane. Roman dominance reshaped Egypt, gradually replacing the Hellenistic influences with more direct Roman practices. The Ptolemaic court, which had been a center of learning, culture, and arts, became a distant memory. Cleopatra, once a patron of scholars, philosophers, and poets, had hoped to maintain Egypt as a cultural beacon of the ancient world. However, after her death, the flourishing of intellectual and artistic life that characterized her reign began to fade. The emphasis shifted from Egyptian grandeur and Hellenistic culture to Roman-style governance, architecture, and military might. Egyptian religion, which had once flourished under the Ptolemies, also saw a gradual decline in the influence it had held. The Roman Empire absorbed many of Egypt's religious practices and deities into its own pantheon, but over time, the distinctly Egyptian elements of the culture became marginalized. Temples, statues, and monuments from the Ptolemaic era remained, but the spiritual and cultural significance they once held was diminished under Roman rule. The end of Egypt's independence, the beginning of Roman Egypt. With Cleopatra's death, Egypt became fully integrated into the Roman Empire. Its status as a Roman province meant that it would no longer govern itself but instead be controlled by Roman officials. The province of Egypt, governed by a Roman prefect, served as a vital part of the empire's economic engine, supplying Rome with essential resources, including grain. While Egypt's political influence had been stripped away, the cultural and historical significance of the land remained. Roman Egypt was a place where Roman laws and customs intersected with the ancient Egyptian traditions that had existed for millennia. Despite being under Roman control, Egypt retained some of its ancient traditions, particularly in the realm of religion and the veneration of its ancient gods. However, the power structures that had once governed Egypt were gone, and the country's political identity was now fully tied to Rome. As Egypt became just another province of the Roman Empire, its role in the Mediterranean world shifted. Once a powerful and independent kingdom, Egypt was now a mere subject of Rome. The decline of Egypt as an independent entity marked the final stage in the fall of the Ptolemaic dynasty and the complete absorption of Egypt into the Roman Empire. The legacy of Cleopatra, the woman who challenged Rome. Cleopatra remains one of the most iconic figures in history, not simply because of her tragic end but because of her ambition, intelligence, and ability to wield power in a male-dominated world. Her strategic alliances with Julius Caesar and Mark Antony are part of her lasting legacy, demonstrating her political acumen. Though her death marked the end of the Ptolemaic dynasty and Egypt's independence, Cleopatra's story continues to capture the imagination of people worldwide. Her ability to influence some of Rome's most powerful leaders, her cultural sophistication, and her tragic end have made her a figure of both admiration and intrigue. Cleopatra's life and reign have inspired countless works of literature, art, and film, further cementing her place in history as one of the most fascinating and complex women to have ever lived. Despite the decline of Egypt after her death, Cleopatra's legacy lives on as a symbol of female power, resilience, and tragedy. Cleopatra's enduring legacy in popular culture. Cleopatra's legacy has transcended time and borders, leaving a profound mark not only on history but also on popular culture. From the time of her death in 30 BCE, she has been an iconic figure, symbolizing political savvy, beauty, and tragedy. Her legacy in literature, theater, film, and art has solidified her status as one of the most enduring and compelling historical figures. In literature, Cleopatra has been portrayed in countless works, ranging from Shakespeare's Antony and Cleopatra to modern novels and plays. The portrayal of Cleopatra in these works often focuses on her intelligence, political prowess, and complex relationships, particularly with Julius Caesar and Mark Antony. Shakespeare's depiction of her, for example, presents her as a figure of immense charm and tragedy, contributing to the archetype of the femme fatale. Over time, her image has evolved, reflecting different cultural perspectives, from a powerful queen to a romantic and tragic heroine. In cinema, Cleopatra has been brought to life by various actresses, with the most famous portrayal being Elizabeth Taylor's iconic role in the 1963 film Cleopatra. The film, while not historically accurate, immortalized Cleopatra's image and added to the legend of her beauty and seduction. The lavish spectacle of the movie, combined with Taylor's powerful performance, ensured Cleopatra's place in modern popular culture. Other depictions, such as in documentaries, miniseries, and even animated films, have continued to build upon her legend, often exploring her leadership, resilience, and intelligence. Cleopatra's enduring legacy in popular culture is a testament to her lasting influence. Whether as a political strategist or a tragic lover, her story has been retold in various forms, highlighting her ability to captivate the imagination of people across different eras. Cleopatra as a symbol of female empowerment. Cleopatra's legacy has also played a crucial role in the feminist movement, serving as an early example of female empowerment in a male-dominated world. As a queen who ruled Egypt independently, navigated complex political alliances, and maintained control over one of the ancient world's richest kingdoms, Cleopatra stands as a powerful symbol of what women can achieve in leadership. Her ability to control her own destiny, despite the numerous obstacles placed before her, has made her a model for modern-day discussions on female power. Cleopatra's skillful use of her intellect, charm, and diplomacy to secure her throne and maintain Egypt's independence from Rome, especially through her relationships with Julius Caesar and Mark Antony, exemplifies the potential for women to shape political landscapes. Her story challenges the idea that women must be passive or subjugated, showing instead that they can actively engage in shaping the course of history. Her influence extends beyond politics, as she also assumed the role of a religious figure, identifying herself with the goddess Isis, which reinforced her power and status. Cleopatra's image as a goddess-like queen in the eyes of her people helped to solidify her legitimacy, not just as a monarch but as a divine ruler. In modern times, her legacy as a woman who unapologetically wielded power continues to inspire women in leadership roles, from politics to business and beyond. Her influence on the Roman Empire. Though Cleopatra's life ended with the fall of the Ptolemaic dynasty, her influence continued to resonate within the Roman Empire. Her alliances with Julius Caesar and Mark Antony were key factors in shaping the political dynamics of Rome, especially during the transition from the Roman Republic to the Roman Empire. Cleopatra's relationship with Caesar in particular was instrumental in consolidating her power and maintaining Egypt's autonomy for as long as possible. Her son Caesarion was widely believed to be Caesar's heir, and Cleopatra sought to secure his place within the Roman political hierarchy. However, after Caesar's assassination, Cleopatra's relationship with Mark Antony became central to her political survival. Together, they tried to challenge the rising power of Augustus, then Octavian, which ultimately led to their downfall. Despite their defeat at the Battle of Actium, Cleopatra's interactions with both Caesar and Antony demonstrated how deeply Egypt's fate was intertwined with Rome's. Her diplomatic skills, coupled with her ability to influence the two most powerful men in Rome, left an indelible mark on Roman history. In many ways, Cleopatra played a role in the creation of the Roman Empire, with her political moves and her relationships with Caesar and Antony altering the course of Roman politics. Cleopatra's impact on Egypt's cultural heritage. Cleopatra's reign marked the last period of the Ptolemaic dynasty, and her death led to the full annexation of Egypt into the Roman Empire. However, despite the political downfall of the Ptolemies, Cleopatra's reign left a lasting impact on Egypt's cultural heritage. During her time, she was a strong patron of the arts and scholarship, seeking to preserve Egypt's ancient traditions while also embracing Hellenistic culture. Cleopatra's influence on Egyptian religious and cultural practices was significant. She was a prominent figure in Egyptian religion, frequently associating herself with the goddess Isis, which helped strengthen her legitimacy as ruler. The temple she supported and the monument she built, including those to the gods, were intended to solidify her connection to Egypt's divine kingship and ensure her legacy. Though Egypt was later absorbed into the Roman Empire, the cultural fusion that occurred during Cleopatra's reign continued to shape the region for years to come. Her patronage of Alexandria as a center of learning also contributed to Egypt's intellectual legacy. Alexandria, already known for its great library, continued to be a hub of philosophy, science, and literature during Cleopatra's time. Though the city's status as a center of learning declined after her death, the intellectual influence of Cleopatra's era persisted long after Egypt became a Roman province. Cleopatra's diplomatic legacy. Cleopatra's diplomatic strategies, especially her ability to forge alliances with Rome's most powerful men, remain a key aspect of her legacy. Her relationships with Julius Caesar and Mark Antony were not merely romantic, they were politically motivated and driven by a desire to protect Egypt's sovereignty. Cleopatra understood the intricacies of Roman politics and used her charm, intelligence, and diplomatic savvy to maneuver her way through the complex political landscape of the time. Her diplomatic efforts were not limited to her dealings with Caesar and Antony. Cleopatra also sought to build alliances with other Eastern powers, and her reign was marked by her attempts to expand Egypt's influence in the Eastern Mediterranean. She understood that Egypt's strategic location and wealth were crucial for maintaining power, and she worked tirelessly to ensure that Egypt remained a prominent player on the world stage. Despite her ultimate defeat, Cleopatra's diplomatic efforts left a mark on the way women in politics were perceived. She demonstrated that diplomacy, intellect, and influence were powerful tools in the hands of women rulers, challenging the traditional notion that women were limited to roles of passive obedience. The symbol of tragedy and romance. In addition to being a figure of power and intellect, Cleopatra's life and death have come to symbolize tragedy and romance. The dramatic nature of her final days, her suicide alongside Mark Antony, the defeat of her army, and the fall of her dynasty, has captured the imagination of generations. This tragic end has been depicted in countless works of art, literature, and theater, ensuring that Cleopatra's story continues to resonate with audiences worldwide. Her romantic relationships with Julius Caesar and Mark Antony have become emblematic of love and political ambition intertwined. The idea of a queen who navigated the complex world of Roman politics through her relationships with these two powerful men adds a layer of drama to her story. However, it is the tragic aspect of her life, the loss of her kingdom, the downfall of her dynasty, and her eventual death, that gives Cleopatra's legacy a poignant and enduring quality. Her death marked the end of Egypt's independence, but it also cemented her status as a tragic hero in history. The image of Cleopatra, an intelligent and capable queen, meeting her demise as a result of political intrigue and betrayal, has made her a timeless figure of both admiration and sorrow. Cleopatra VII's life and reign remain one of the most captivating chapters in history. From her ambitious rise to power in a male-dominated world to her strategic alliances with two of the most powerful Roman leaders, Julius Caesar and Mark Antony, Cleopatra's story is one of intelligence, political acumen, and immense personal charisma. Her journey through triumphs, betrayals, and eventual defeat has shaped her legacy as not only a powerful ruler but also a symbol of both feminine strength and tragic romance. Cleopatra's ability to navigate the complex political landscape of the ancient world was unparalleled. At a time when women were often relegated to the sidelines of political power, Cleopatra defied convention and established herself as an independent ruler of Egypt. Her struggles with her brother, Ptolemy XIII, and the political factions that sought to undermine her authority highlight her determination and resourcefulness. Even when she was expelled from Alexandria, she demonstrated remarkable resilience, using her intelligence to gather support and ultimately reclaim her throne. This ability to outwit and outmaneuver her adversaries was a key feature of her reign, showcasing her sharp political mind and strategic brilliance. Cleopatra's relationship with Julius Caesar was a turning point in her quest to secure her power. Caesar's support gave her the military strength needed to restore her position, and their alliance cemented her place as a significant political player in the ancient world. Cleopatra's role in Caesar's life was not merely as a lover but as a trusted ally. Their son, Caesarion, represented a symbolic link between Cleopatra's reign and the power of Rome, underscoring her ability to combine personal and political goals. However, Caesar's assassination in 44 BCE left Cleopatra facing new uncertainties. Her subsequent alliance with Mark Antony was another bold and strategic move, meant to safeguard Egypt's independence and to solidify her position in the face of growing Roman power. The eventual defeat of Cleopatra and Antony at the Battle of Actium marked the end of Egypt's autonomy, but it also sealed Cleopatra's place in history as a tragic heroine. Her legacy is not solely defined by her political achievements or her romantic entanglements. Cleopatra's life also highlights the complexities of power, identity, and survival. As a ruler, she sought to preserve Egypt's ancient traditions while embracing the cultural and political innovations of the Hellenistic world. Her patronage of the arts and her strategic use of religion to reinforce her authority, by aligning herself with the goddess Isis, show her ability to merge political and cultural symbolism to strengthen her reign. Cleopatra's reign marked the end of the Ptolemaic dynasty and the beginning of Egypt's integration into the Roman Empire. While her political downfall ultimately led to Egypt's loss of independence, her reign was one of the final attempts to maintain Egypt's sovereignty in the face of Roman expansion. Cleopatra's legacy also resonates in modern times, symbolizing female empowerment and resilience. She has become an enduring figure in literature, theater, art, and film, representing the archetype of a strong woman in leadership. Her story has inspired countless portrayals in art and media, from Shakespeare's Antony and Cleopatra to Elizabeth Taylor's legendary portrayal in the 1963 film Cleopatra. These portrayals, while often dramatized, emphasize her charisma, political intelligence, and complex relationships, ensuring that her story continues to captivate audiences today. As a ruler who commanded respect and wielded significant power in a male-dominated world, Cleopatra serves as an early symbol of female strength, making her an enduring figure in discussions about women in politics and leadership. Her tragic end, her death alongside Mark Antony after their defeat by Octavian's forces, ensured that Cleopatra's life would always be viewed through the lens of tragedy. Despite her ambition and achievements, her death marked the collapse of Egypt's independence and the final dissolution of the Ptolemaic dynasty. However, her story is not one of simple defeat. Cleopatra's life and reign stand as a testament to her ability to maintain power in one of the most volatile political environments in history. Her strategic genius, her personal and political alliances, and her enduring image as a queen of both intellect and beauty ensure her place in history as one of the most fascinating and influential women of the ancient world.